1 to 3 of these homes replaces a six-figure income. You can keep your W-2 job and still be able to run 1 or 2 of these homes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the house structure that you have, staff or help, maybe cleaning services or maintenance?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Peak Profits podcast. Today's guest is Jim Bode, a no-nonsense entrepreneur and the founder of Shelton Housing First. Jim has launched over 14 recovery homes in just 2 years, with 8 more already scheduled and on the way, and is on a mission to help others do the same. Through his book, Group Home Accelerator, and his high-touch coaching program, Jim is equipping purpose-driven entrepreneurs to build sober living and transitional housing that not only generate income, but truly change lives. Jim believes this isn't just real estate, it's a calling. Jim, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm amazing. Super stoked to be here.
That's awesome. So you are the first person who's been on the Peak Profits podcast that is talking around kind of sober living and transitional housing. So can you just give us an overview of what is sober living and transitional housing and how did you get into this space?
Absolutely. I'm not surprised. It's getting a little bit more popular, but still not a lot of people even really understand what this is. I think the biggest misconception a lot of people have initially on this is they think that we're a recovery facility and we've got inpatient drug clinics. And then we are really the gap that bridges people coming out from getting clean to people actually staying sober. Because when they come out of inpatient drug clinic, they have tasks and things to do. But most of the time, people will go right back to the same place they were, around the same people they were, doing the exact same things that they were. Where when we get to bridge that gap and they get to come into a sober living home, well, now they're coming into a structured environment where, they're around only people that are trying to stay sober. So they're in the fight with other people. They're not fighting against other people like when you go home and are around your friends that still drink or do drugs. So that's the easiest way I can explain a sober living home. And they're really done out of just regular residential properties. They're not a specific business structure like you have to have a commercial building or anything like that. We run all of ours out of single family homes in nice, quiet neighborhoods. And then how I ended up getting into these I've been a real estate investor for about 25 years, started as a fix and flipper, started doing the Burr method, and COVID hit, and COVID just decimated me. I was watching everything I spent 20 plus years building almost slip away overnight because all of my tenants just literally stopped paying. I'd reach out to them and say, how can I help? And they're like, oh, you can't help. We're fine. I'm like, well, then why aren't you paying? We don't have to. And there's nothing you can do. And they weren't wrong. Like there was literally, but the two options that my attorneys told me is you can move into one of the houses and take it back, or you can sell them. And, as you all know, selling a house with people in it, and especially tenants that aren't paying, you don't get top dollar. So, it was pretty devastating. But really, one night I was just so sick of looking at all the red on my screen because I was negative in literally everything: utility bills, mortgage payments. There was nothing that wasn't red. So I was just doom scrolling, watching gambling videos and just whatever I could find to not think about anything. And I ran across a video for Group Homes, and it talked about how they were still profiting even in our down market. I watched the video. I bought the little training program. It was pretty decent. And within the week, I started shifting homes into sober living homes because I had homes that weren't on the market yet. And I was just going to try to sell them because I wasn't going to put renters in it that weren't going to pay. But it kind of worked out, and it allowed me to just jumpstart my business. It's how I was able to do 14 homes in less than 2 years.
That's amazing. And I can see how this could be, as you say, a calling, right? You're not only providing housing and support, but also you're helping out people in a transition period where I'd imagine your environment is everything, right? When you're coming out of maybe a tough moment in their life. And then, like you said, if you get thrown right back in, that's where you see a lot of people kind of fall back into that same either addiction or whatever they had fallen into previously. So that's incredible. You had mentioned 14 recovery homes. Can you give us a little update on from that time in COVID, when you had that kind of epiphany moment of, obviously COVID was a wild scenario and situation for the whole world. And it really shifted what you're doing today in the real estate space to where and how you got into 14 homes. That's incredible scaling already. So can you kind of take us through where you're at today and a little bit of that time period?
Absolutely. So one of the big things now is I've actually scaled down the amount of homes I have because the model shifted a little bit. So before, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath duplex was awesome for me. They were really simple to rent. They were cheap and affordable. So like I had an endless pool of people. If it went vacant, I had a list of people ready to move into it. But those don't work as well for the recovery homes. 4 bedrooms is really where you kind of minimum want to be on your recovery homes, just because that way you can have a whole empty bedroom and still and the home can still cash flow and keep afloat. Where you get into the 5 bedrooms, now you're in the super sweet spot. Now you're really cranking. You're helping up to 10 people because we do 2 people per room, and we do 2 people per room for really important reasons. The first one is the most important. The likelihood of them relapsing when they're in a room with somebody else so drastically decreases compared to solo rooms. Almost every single relapse I've had in my homes have been in a solo room. So it's that level of accountability and just camaraderie that you get with someone. You can't just be alone in your own head, because a lot of times, not a lot of times, most of the times, I'm getting people that are coming from their lowest low. I mean, they'll come to me with just like literally a garbage bag with some clothes in it. So I mean, it's not like they're moving in and have furniture and TVs and luxury items. I mean, they're rebuilding their life. So they're not working quite often, so they can have a lot of time alone if you give that to them. And, so I lost track of where I was going with that.
And so I guess the question I have too, when they come out and you find a potential, these tenants that you're working with that came out of these rehab centers or wherever they were, is there any type of government work here or stipend that you receive to house these people to help them? Or what does the financial logistics look like once they come out of recovery?
I get paid for anywhere between 2 and 6 months on almost everybody that comes out. There's quite a few state and federal programs that are out there for people. And then there's other local nonprofits that also have money for this. You can lean into some of the things like you were saying, kind of like transient housing and things like that. We work with quite a few nonprofits in our area that help when people need to get help with this. And then ultimately, a lot of people end up getting back on their feet, getting to work, and then can switch over to self-pay or move on to their next place. But we still are kind of affordable housing. So even when it runs out, it's hard to find a place in our area for the price range that we're in, with all the utilities and amenities included.
So can you just, Jim, run us through an example of one of your properties? Like you said, you were talking about a sweet spot of 5 bedrooms, 2 people per room, right? Like what does one of these houses look like from an overall perspective? Is it furnished? Because you mentioned a lot of these people don't have potentially any belongings. They come with a bag of stuff, no luxury items. Like, can you just walk us through, like, what does one of these kind of sober living houses look like? What is the makeup of that home? And how do you ultimately go about teaching others? Because I think I'm basically asking you, how do you teach other people how to do some of this stuff that you do obviously in your coaching courses as well? So can you just give us a little bit of a feel for that?
Absolutely. Ultimately, this is probably the simplest business I've ever run, because there's not a million moving parts like flipping a house and working contractors and working all these things. The reality is you'd pull up to any of my homes and you wouldn't really have a clue that it's anything more than a residential single family home. The 2 biggest giveaways that you're going to get is I tend to have more couches and chairs in the living room than most people would. And there's 2 beds in every bedroom. And beyond that, these are just normal residential homes. I could move everybody out tomorrow and resell it as a single family listing. So structural wise like that, I'm not like I've followed and I looked down like the pad split method, and people are showing you how to come in and, turn every room into a bedroom. So now you have 8 bedrooms in the house. That's not really what I'm trying to show people to do. That's a whole different coaching program, but and not mine. But like just really the 4 to 5 bedrooms, which aren't impossible to find. And if you have to do some conversion, cool. Then I can guide people through that. But that's not the value I'm bringing to anybody. The value that I'm bringing to somebody really is being able to show them just from A to Z everything not to do and how to do all the right things. Because if you don't do things in order, you can definitely get yourself a little messed up. because the biggest thing that people run into is you have to educate a lot of people about what you're doing, because this isn't the most popular business model in the world yet. So your city might not understand what this is, and they might think that you're opening a boarding house in their neighborhood and say, we have restrictions against that. But when it's a sober living home, we have ADA protections, because when you are a recovering addict, you are classified as you with a disability. So we get those protections that will stop a lot of you can't have more than 5 non-family members living in a home. So that's how we're able to move past that. Plus, we're never actually renting these properties to people. They're in a program. So we do have the teeth to remove people if they do drugs or not following the rules. So they're never really classified. Not really. They're never classified as an actual tenant. They're always in a program. So that's the basic structure of it. I mean, as a house, you wouldn't know the difference.
And how does that work, Jim? So how does if they're not technically tenants, I don't know, how would we refer to somebody who would be living within these homes? Is there a structured term for that, or are they just...
we either use residents or participants, because they're participating in a program.
Okay.
And if
but
they
how would a participant apply? Like, what does that process look like for a participant to get into one of these sober homes?
Where we get almost all of our people is we will get a call about 2 weeks before they're going to get out of an inpatient drug clinic, and they will call and say, do you have a bed? I'm getting ready to graduate from wherever I'm graduating from. And we keep a waiting list. So we always have, our homes are always full. And it's just because that's how bad the need still is for them. So that's where the majority of our people come. We don't get very many that are just a solo walk-in, hey, I need a sober living home. Because the reality is you have to come to us clean. So we drug test people coming into the home. We do random drug tests when they're in the home. So like, you can't just pop in and say, hey, I want to get clean, I'm going to move into your house. That's not the services we provide. So, and because we actually don't provide any services, we give them a safe place with rules, and the rules are enforced. So, and then we do also work with the Department of Corrections. It's called the reentry program. So we do take quite a few people that are coming out of prison and need a place to go. So that's about a month before. So we'll get a call from the Department of Corrections. Hey, do you guys have space? Cool, we've got a guy. They'll set up an interview, and we use an amazing tool called Sobriety Hub. And that is our database. That is what we keep everything in, and it's built specifically just for sober living homes. So it goes all the way down to the bed level. So I know what address they're at, what room they're in, and what bed they're in. And then, from there, we know all of their other details, but we get to just send them over a link, either through a text or through an email. And then that's how we initiate the process with them. And then all of their paperwork is done digitally like that, and then stored in the cloud. So no more filing cabinets and holding documents for 5 years, which has been such a relief, because we did that for way too long.
I hear you on that. So what market are you guys operating in today? And is this something that can be operated through markets throughout the country? And where do you guys specifically focus?
We're outside of Seattle. So we're in a smaller town outside of Seattle. And yeah, you can do this all over the country. There's about 5 states where there's a heavier licensing requirement, but it can still absolutely be done. You just have to do different certification things. And I help people through that process as well, because like in Florida, you have to have a certified person with you, and it's about a 100-hour certification. I've got people that have just gotten that 100-hour certification. And then also I help guide people to where you can hire someone to just do that for you and with you, because they're absolutely out there. So
you also wrote a book, Group Home Accelerator, right? And so with that book, you also offer a high touch coaching program. Can you elaborate on what that book is? It like a roadmap in how to do this and set it up for those readers? And then your high touch coaching program, can you elaborate on what you offer to your students?
Absolutely. So my book is absolutely, it's a solid blueprint. It is pretty much everything we're going to go through in the coaching program. It's just, of course, in the coaching program, we get to go through it together. There's 2 levels of my coaching program. One, you can either jump into my school group, and it's a little less touch. We're going to get together once a week, sometimes twice a week. I'll respond to questions, but like everything's recorded in there. So you have the roadmap recorded, and then we get to do a lot of stuff together. Our Q&As are really powerful because it's not just me talking. I'm coming in, I'm answering questions, but like we can also do things where, hey, you're having a hard time getting these centers to respond to you. Let's call some. Let's see how this goes. And then we'll actually bound back and forth and even script. I'll call some and talk with them. And because if you've never done cold calling, I'm not dealing with salespeople most of the time. I mean, I'm dealing with somebody coming out of a nonprofit who just wants to help their family, or I'm dealing with like a real estate investor who wants to 10x their cash flow on a property. So it's not like they've cold called all the time, where as a past realtor, I used to call FISBOs, and like cold calling is not a problem. You just got to smile and dial. And you almost forget that that's not a skill set that most people have. So those are the little things where like, hey, here's what you do. You got to smile, guys, because they hear that through the phone, Hi, this is Jim. I want you to put people in my house. Or, hey, this is Jim. How's your day going? Great. Awesome. We've got a brand new recovery home that's opening up in your neighborhood, and I would like to know who I need to speak with to put people in these homes. How can I help you? And then you're engaged. It's a completely different conversation than the first one.
And as part of that coaching program that you do, Jim, what can people expect, and how could people get in touch with you to maybe be part of that program?
Well, the coaching program's the same name as my book, Group Home Accelerator. So just grouphomeaccelerator.com, or just my name, jimbode.com. And that leads you to the same place. And then, the reality is I really help people from start to finish. And some things are backwards that you wouldn't think that you need to do. So like it is important to follow the steps, because if you just rush out and buy a house, well, maybe you're buying a house in the wrong area. Maybe you're buying a house in an HOA, and they can't specifically stop you from doing this, but they sure can make your life hard. So being able to just avoid those costly mistakes that people make because they just don't know is the biggest thing that you're going to really get. And that's really it. It's A to Z and everything in between. So
can we run through over the next 10 minutes? Say I'm a student, I'm coming in, and this is very high level, I understand. But what would I do to get started if I don't know anything about this space? Like, do I start to just go on Zillow and look for residential houses with maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms because you've identified those as houses that would work in this space? So could you give us some structure, some guidance as a coach yourself as to where to get started if we came in?
Yep. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to Google whatever area you want to be in, inpatient drug clinics. And we're going to start calling inpatient drug clinics, because you can have your house full before you ever even own a house. And then this is also going to give you your proof of concept. And this is also literally one of the hardest parts of this. You have to pierce that veil and get people to want to start sending you people. And if you don't, your business isn't going to grow, because the websites and all that, you need a website because you need a website nowadays. But like, I haven't brought one person in that said, hey, I found you off your website and I can't wait to come move in your sober living home. Like it's never happened to me in 4 years. And it's not because my website stinks. It's just, it's not where you get this. Your marketing is to inpatient drug clinics and to the Department of Corrections. So you need to start hitting them right away. They're going to tell you exactly what they want and exactly where they want to be. So, some areas they have a higher need for women homes, and some areas they have a higher need for men's homes. So this is going to help you determine the path that you go and the area that you're in. So then once you're doing that and you're just building your database of inpatient drug clinics, keeping track of who you're calling, when you're calling, who you're talking to. So, because most of the people in these places, they're so overworked and underpaid. Like, they're nice. They want to talk to you ultimately, but like, they're not going to be great at getting back to you 99% of the time, because they're just busy doing all the other stuff they have to do. So you do have to be systematized on this. You got to stay after them. I would tell you to call, to email, and to pop by if you can. And it's just, if you hit them with that trifecta, you're going to ultimately get through and get a hold of somebody that's going to say, hey, this person's serious. I'll put them on my list. Because once you're on your list, then when people are starting to graduate their program every single week, they're going to say, hey, call this person. Hey, call this person. Because that's where they get those numbers from. And they tend to not play favorites, because the reality is there's not enough of these to play favorites with. So that's your first step. And then we're going to give you your proof of concept there. Any questions on that step?
I have a quick question. So do the participants have the option to go into one of these homes, or are they sometimes forced into a sober living home? How does that work?
So anyone coming out of a clinic, like a rehab clinic, they have the option to do whatever they want, unless it was like court appointed. But that's a little different. That's kind of kicking a little bit more over to my DOC people. The DOC people, a lot of these guys, there are people stuck in prison right now because they have nowhere to go. Like, I mean, legitimately, we get calls 30 plus days before they get out, because some people have to register. Like they might be an offender of a different level, where like they have to tell wherever they're going 2 weeks up to 36 days ahead of time that, hey, I'm getting out of prison and I'm moving to your area. And they don't have to be accepted, but they have to be told, they have disclosures that they have to do. So that's why it's so far in advance with DOC people. But those are the only ones that are not forced. They're still allowed to leave your home, but they can't just leave your home. Like if somebody from DOC and they're being supervised came into my home and just packed up and left, they just breached they just violated probation, unless they talked to their probation officer first, had all that scheduled, and then just never told me. But normally, if they do that, they're just leaving. So, but then anybody has the choice. We have people that leave because they don't like the rules, or they don't like what we're charging because they think they can get a cheaper room somewhere else. And anytime they've ever left for a cheaper room, they've been back within a week, because they don't run them the same. We actually care. We have staff that like come around to our houses 5 to 6 days a week. We actually make people do chores. We actually make people mow the lawns. We change out mattresses and pads, and we do all the right things, where not everyone does.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think coming into a home like that, where you have the structure and people that will help take care of the home itself and the property, and like you said, get them back on their feet once they are back in the public world, and can ultimately make their own decisions to do what they want. They're choosing to stay with you and get their life back on track and stay on track. And so you brought up an interesting point there. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the house structure that you have, staff or help, maybe cleaning services or maintenance, and how that works within the home?
Absolutely. So there's two structures that you really can run on these. You can either run the self-run structure, where you'll tag somebody in the home and put them in charge. That is my least favorite structure. To me, that's kind of an emergency structure, for two reasons. One, I just don't like the fact of somebody living in the home that's in kind of a peer becoming an authority figure. I don't know why so often it tends to bolster people with this false sense of power, and not everyone handles power well. So I don't like that aspect. And then beyond that, the most important thing to me is that I'm creating a perpetual job that I have to fill when I put someone in charge like that, because the ultimate goal is to get people back on their feet, get them strong enough that they can go out and they don't have to be in a sober living home. They can be around alcohol again and still function. So we ultimately want them to move on whenever they're ready. So like I'm rooting for you to leave me. And if you're in charge, it kind of skews how I don't want you to leave now, So I personally I like to find my staff from the inpatient drug clinics. That's a pretty big tip that I give people, because somebody could run 15 to 20 homes if they're geographically in a pretty tight area pretty easily, because we have a 10-minute checklist of walking through a house of all the things that you need to do to make sure that house is safe and secure. And then as long as you spend there, I have different people. Some people will spend hours there because they like everybody and they talk and they'll hang out and they'll engage. I have other people that just go through, do their checklist, make sure everybody's good, still nice, still friendly, but they don't want to hang out and play ping pong in the rec room or anything, So that's kind of where the two structures that you can run it. And I always lean to the second, because I didn't build this so I could have a job. And if I've got to constantly keep finding that next person that's going to run the home, or I got to keep stepping back in to run it, I just bought myself a job, and that's not what I want to do.
And are there any insurance implications you have to consider with a home like this, or do you just get your standard homeowners insurance? And what are the risks associated with potentially having multiple people outside of a family living together, up to 10, potentially in a 5-bedroom? Are there any other risks outside of that from an insurance standpoint?
I don't feel like there's a ton of external ones beyond just normal risk of people doing stupid things. So, you do have to communicate with your insurance company, and there are specific insurance companies that deal specifically with this. There's some that won't do it at all. Oh, we don't touch those. But really, my rates didn't change much, and my coverage didn't change much on my homeowner's insurance. It's still fairly basically renter's insurance. But what the biggest difference is you're gonna want to. There's a group called NAR, the National Association of Recovery Residents, and they're going to you can get licensed through them. A few states like Florida, which they're the group. So NAR has a different thing in most states. It's not in every state, but Florida's is FAR, Florida Association of Recovery Residents, and you're required to be licensed through them in Florida if you want to accept money, any state or federal money. So I recommend everybody go through NAR, and whatever your state certification is, I recommend people get it. And then they're going to make you get a commercial insurance policy, which I recommend you get anyway. You get $1 and $2 million limits, and that covers everything else. That covers slip and falls, fights. Somebody does something crazy in the home. It covers almost everything else. And then if you're certified through one of these places, they will end up sending people there to walk through your home and make sure, basically do a home inspection, make sure you have egressable windows in every bedroom and exit signs and a map and just some basic things. Nothing too challenging to pass. But they also want to make sure their people are covered on your property. So that insurance will cover that as well. So it's not exorbitant. I mean, I pay like $3,500 a year for all of my houses under that big umbrella. Because it's just one policy and it encompasses all my houses.
So, Jim, how do you balance? So this ultimately is a business, right?
Yes.
So how do you balance making money whilst ultimately making an impact? Like what you're doing is such an impressive thing that some people may look at it in a negative light, which based on the conversation we've had, that's not the reason why you're doing this. But at the end of the day, this is also still a business, right? Like, how do you balance the making money whilst also still making a positive impact on these people and communities?
This is something I've struggled with in my own personal life, and absolutely sometimes have to explain to people. Actually, all the time I have to explain it to people on the other end. I have two basic people that I work with. I work with operators who are coming from a place of, just heart. I want to help. This is all I want to do. I've been touched by addiction. I've been through addiction, whatever their inner need to help is. And then there are investors, and the investors tend to not want to run the homes. And I tell everybody, if you're just doing this for the cash flow, you're going to epically fail at this. You're going to be a slumlord. But what I have to teach operators that are coming from a place of just pure passion and wanting to help is that you have to treat this as a business. Because if we aren't profitable, we can't help more people. I can't open 14 homes when I'm a charity and I lose money every month. I can't do it. So I have to be able to make lots of money. And it's not about me making money so I can buy a new Bugatti. It's about me making lots of money so I can buy 3 more of these houses. And now I can help 30 plus more people at a time, which over the course of a year is going to be 600 or 800 people by the time we're done with the year. And just the compounding effect of you making money. When I have money, I can let people stay in my house when they can't afford to pay the mortgage payment or not mortgage payment, but can't pay their fees. Their funding ran out. They lost their job. I've let people stay in our homes for up to 4 months past paying. And then they ultimately found the job and then started back with paying us. Some just moved on because they couldn't find a job and they were embarrassed, but I've never chased anybody for money. That's why you have to make money, because money's just a tool. And most people don't know me, but I stopped caring about money about 15 years ago. Money drove every decision I made as an investor, and all I cared about were the blingy watches and the cars and a bigger house and better vacations. But my metric is totally different. My metric of success comes from my time now. How much time I get to spend with my wife, how much time I get to spend walking my dogs and petting my cats. Those are the things that matter the most in my world right now. But if I don't track money, I stop helping people. It's just that tool. And it gives me so much flexibility to do whatever I want to help people.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's a great answer. And it says a lot about yourself and why you do what you do within this space. And it sounds like you really have found the calling, like we mentioned earlier, which is awesome. And congrats. Um, on that money portion, though, in order for you to be able to go out and purchase new homes and open up these new facilities for people, what do you want to see in a typical home? I guess from a cash flow standpoint, or can you break down, I guess, expenses, right? Standard residential house, you're going to have your mortgage, your insurance, right? And then some operating expenses that you're going to incur. But what does rent or fees look like for the residents? And how are you weighing cash flow to ensure that your business ultimately is profitable?
Absolutely. And of course, this is going to be very, very geographic because, I can go literally 30 minutes away and homes start out at the $700,000 range. Where I'm at, I can still buy homes in the $350,000 range. So or I can go over to Ohio and I can buy $80,000 homes in certain areas. So what you're going to bring in is going to be relative. But where I'm at is, on average, I'm spending about $350 to just under $400 on a home. And I end up getting $850 per bed. So just easy math, my 5-bedroom homes, $850 times, 10, I'm bringing in $8,500. I'm under $4,000 all in with insurance, utilities, all of those different things. And that home is cash flowing between $4,000 and $4,500 a month. So you really can 10X, because when I was banging a rental and it was just doing good, I was getting $400 a month off of a regular single family rental. And now, if I was buying them now, I'd probably be lucky to break even.
And we talk to a lot of people on this podcast or investors within our network. And a lot of our investors or listeners are high income W-2 professionals, are exploring getting into real estate investing, or have a small portfolio themselves, or maybe bought 1, 2, or 3 different properties. They're weighing out whether scaling their own portfolio is worth it or even makes sense, right? To your point, if you buy a single family house nowadays, right, it's hard to even cash flow at today's prices and interest rates, and if it even makes sense. And so are you going to do all that work for maybe, if you're cash flowing $300 a month, $3,600 a year, right? And that could be wiped out with one, furnace going out, right? A couple years of cash flow. So they're starting to weigh the option of, which route do I go in real estate investing? And it's such a broad spectrum of real estate investing. And we've been fortunate to have so many different guests on our show that have made and been successful in so many different avenues within that realm. And to what we said earlier, this is the first time we've talked to someone who is not only having a lot of success in the real estate investing space with sober living, but also, you're doing an awesome thing for a lot of people in a very needy time of their life. Right. And so it's incredible to see what you're doing, and applause to you. And so if people want to get involved and start to learn or talk to Jim or get involved with your coaching program, where could they find you and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. JimBode.com is probably the easiest one, or GroupHomeAccelerator.com. Plus, I'm all over social media with Group Home Accelerator and Jim Bode. And then kind of back to what you were saying too, one of the really cool things about this, especially if you want to be an investor operator, 1 to 3 of these homes replaces a 6-figure income. I mean, you can keep your W-2 job and still be able to run 1 or 2 of these homes, because once you're up and humming and running, the day-to-day upkeep of them it's not a full-time job. So, I mean, even at the peak when I had 14 homes running, I had 2 people working part-time because I had one person mainly doing clerical stuff, and then the other person just doing house checks and drug tests and things like that. But we don't do it 7 days a week. And like I said, I mean, I've got a 10-minute walkthrough checklist. You could be in and out of every home in less than 30 minutes. So, you can really speed through these, and especially when you only have 1 to 3 homes. Like now you're working 2 to 4 hours a day if you're going to them every day.
Right. And so what's next for Group Home Accelerator? Where do you want to scale your business? You mentioned earlier you value not even monetary. It's more time, your time, and I think I can relate to that. As we just started a family, had our first kid. Like, time, being able to control your calendar is most important aspect, I would argue, of our life as well. And so, where do you scale? Do you get to a point where you say, "Hey, I have 7 houses that I own myself. It's bringing in me a great income. I'm providing, housing for, up to X amount of people, 70 people potentially," and then you stop there and then you just let it operate? Or where do you feel like you're going to take the business with not only your own business, but with your students?
With my own business, I've got a 12 lot development that I'm getting ready to build out. I'm probably going to stop there on a personal level just so I can keep my team tight. But really, where I'm at now is I'm all in on teaching other people how to do this, because I haven't looked anywhere yet where we don't need this, and I haven't looked anywhere yet where there's an overabundance and a market saturated. Hey, we've just got way too many sober living homes around this area. I just haven't found that yet. I don't want to oversaturate this specifically, but I really, really want to teach other people how to do it, because it's so needed. And the worse our economy does, the more people actually need this. So, I mean, whether the economy is good or bad, people are going to do drugs and people are going to have addiction. But even if the economy starts to tank, not that this is recession proof per se, but your need kind of increases the harder life gets for people. So it's a business that's very important to be in, and I feel like you can really do for quite some time. So,
well, Jim, this has been great speaking with you. I do want to echo what Bryan said. It's more than just a business. It's ultimately changing people's lives and giving people the opportunity to get back on their feet. You should obviously be proud of what you're doing from that side of things, as well as helping others build their own businesses. So I just want to say thank you for joining us. This has been really, really insightful. Thank you for sharing that. Everyone, go and look at jimbode.com so that you can see what Jim is up to. Huge thanks for joining us today, Jim.
Well, thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Jim.